Let's get the views now of a very good friend of mine, former Conservative MP, and now elite-level political commentator and broadcaster, Sir Michael Fabricant. Sir Michael, good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Well, I'm very well, but I'm a little bit gloomy about the prospects for this country, both on the football pitch and in Downing Street.
Well, you know, I've been following football regularly. God, I've been a football follower now for must have been 10 days. And I saw last night the match. And, you know, I've been posting a graph of popularity of leaders. And it's quite interesting because Kemi Badenoch is now finally in the plus thing. But you've got Thomas Tuchel right up there, right at the top. I'm trying to get my finger in the right point. There we are, right at the top. And I suspect if they now did a graph now, he would have gone right down to the very bottom. But no, it was very sad. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was great when we got that 1-0 first off. And then it was if, you know, we didn't know where the ball was or anything. I'm no footballer. Boy, I used to run around like a demented ant when I was on the football pitch when I was at school, because I was a very fast runner. I just didn't know where the ball was. But it just seemed like that. I mean, why we didn't stay on the offensive, I don't know. But hey, there are better football commentators than me.
It's not unlike the world of politics, is it? We haven't won the World Cup since 1966. We always seem to have the players. What we don't seem to have, Sir Michael, is the leadership.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, it's quite interesting. I spoke to my very, very best friend, ChatGPT, last night, and 5 of the footballers on the Argentinian squad, and 4 of them in the actual team last night, actually play for English clubs. I mean, it was quite interesting after the game how they were sort of hugging each other, some of them, because some of the English guys play on the same team as the Argentinians who are playing against them. But yeah, you're right. It seems that we just don't have the right leadership, at least when it comes to playing football, or at least when it comes to this present government. I had to say that, didn't I?
Well, let's talk about that, Sir Michael. That is your area of expertise. What can we read into the news that reportedly Shabana Mahmood will be the Chancellor? What does that mean, do you think, if it happens, for immigration?
Well, she's a bit of an unknown quantity, but I think with the Home Office, she was doing or trying to do a pretty decent job.
Yeah.
You always know when someone's trying to do a decent job, because then the Labour backbenchers, who are all very, very left-wing, object. And they did object to her, and they think she's far too left-wing. And that's one of the reasons, sorry, far too right-wing. And that's one of the reasons why she's being moved. So I'm hoping that she will be able to do a decent job as Chancellor of the Exchequer. But I personally have some major doubts. First of all, you've got Burnham saying that he's going to have higher taxes and they're going to have wealth taxes. Now, that's all very well and good, except how do you define wealth? Because when Labour were talking about mansion tax before, it seemed that most people who own properties in London, and maybe even where I'm speaking to you from now, Lichfield, which is quite an expensive property area, all these people would fall under the category of being so-called wealthy. And that'll mean that taxes will be higher for a lot of people in the UK. So Shabana Mahmood is a bit of an unknown quantity, of course, as being a Chancellor of the Exchequer, but it could have been far worse. It could have been Ed Miliband.
Most definitely, I agree with that, but I'm worried about what it means for illegal immigration, and it's also a concern in regard to the so-called Boris wave of 2.6 million people who came to this country in the course of 5 years. Some reports suggest that that Boris wave comes with a long-term bill of £250 billion because you have low-skilled individuals who will be dependent on the state for the rest of their lives. Now, Shabana Mahmood had a great policy. You would have to wait 10, not 5 years for settled status based upon 3 criteria: a command of the English language, the absence of a criminal record, and you would have to be economically productive. And I'm really worried, Sir Michael, that that's going to go up in smoke.
I think it will because of pressure again, as I was saying earlier, from the very, very left wing Labour backbenchers who didn't like it at all. And of course, the Boris wave was meant to be for people who had skills, but it just hasn't worked out that way. And of course, Starmer has been boasting that, that there has been less net immigration. But that's because so many immigrants who are producing for this country have left the country because he's put the economy in such a state. Rachel Reeves has really dragged us down with huge debt and growth rates which were not as originally expected.
Well, you're an entrepreneur as well as a former politician, Sir Michael, and you know, to coin a phrase, that you cannot tax your way to prosperity.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I set up a company from scratch with a friend of mine, and we ended up by setting up radio stations in 48 countries around the world. I just don't think I could do that now in the present conditions. Banks have become far more conservative, far more worried about lending money, partly because the cost of borrowing money is so high. Not only because we've borrowed so much, or Rachel Reeves has borrowed so much, it's also because the world economies do not have faith in our own economy. They think we're taxed too high. And as a consequence, they're worried that we won't be able to pay the debt back. And that leads to the fact that we're now paying a massive amount in repayment because interest rates to the UK are now some of the highest in Europe, if not the highest in Europe. They just don't trust us to lend us money.
We've got 3 years until the next election, potentially, Sir Michael. How do you see Andy Burnham's premiership playing out? What do you think's going to happen? What's your best guess?
Well, that's a $64,000 question. The truthful answer is nobody knows. I mean, he's got a great personality. He's a lot nicer guy. I always said that Keir Starmer is a dud. I'm not going to say that about Andy Burnham, but I don't think Andy Burnham has got the headroom in a number of ways. First of all, because of the huge debt that Rachel Reeves has left us with, all of her own making, I might say, because of her talking down the economy, and it stopped people investing, it stopped people buying in the shops, which meant that our income from taxes went down. But also, he's got no headroom because of his own backbenchers, who are nothing like him. I mean, the trouble with Andy Burnham is you don't know what he stands for. When he came into the House of Commons, and I was there when he came into the House of Commons, when he got elected, he was a right-wing Blairite. And he was trying to make massive reforms to the NHS. All of that was blocked by the Labour backbenchers. These are the unemployable people who become MPs. They're backbenchers because even in a Labour government, they're not fit to get onto the front bench. And they're all left-wingers because they know absolutely nothing about running a business. And of course, Andy Burnham falls into that same category. He's never run a business.
Well, I agree. My interpretation of Shabana Mahmood, one of the few high-quality ministers in this government, my interpretation of her leaving the Home Office, Sir Michael, is that Burnham wants to soften on immigration. How might we interpret Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary, which is being reported this morning?
Well, I think it puts him out of harm's way, because the truth of the matter is the Foreign Secretary job is mainly done by the Prime Minister. The Foreign Secretary is normally, like Yvette Cooper very much is, a nodding donkey, just carrying out the will of the Prime Minister. Now, what I don't know is whether Andy Burnham is as tough on Ukraine and other issues as Keir Starmer was. That we will have to see. I think, if anything, the one, wouldn't say success, but at least Keir Starmer behaved in a way that I thought was appropriate regarding foreign policy. I hope Andy Burnham will as well. So actually, as far as Ed Miliband is concerned, it gets him out of harm's way. I mean, the last thing we want him to do is to continue in his present job. He is a green fanatic. And got to bear in mind that carbon dioxide emissions from the United Kingdom counts for less than 1% of what the world is pumping out. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't have restrictions, but, there is a lot of oil out there. And, to quote Donald Trump, drill, baby, drill, because the oil is there and it will help us keep fuel prices down. And incidentally, our fuel prices are the highest in Europe. And that doesn't just mean how it affects us at the gas pump. It also means that our manufacturing becomes less competitive because they have to use fuel as well, particularly in ceramics, because I'm speaking to you from South Staffordshire, but a lot of North Staffordshire potteries have gone out of business. They just can't afford to fire up those kilns.
Well, I'd like to go back to the common sense 90s position, which was really the consensus in regard to the environment, which was an energy mix. We need to go back to that. Does the decision, if it happens by Andy Burnham, to put Ed Miliband in the Foreign Office suggest that he's going to row back on net zero? Because we know the unions don't like it.
Yeah, well, I very much hope that will be the case. I mean, I'm afraid, as much as I love Boris Johnson, that was also one of his fanatical things. I will tell you a very quick story. I think I told you actually out of the studio, but I'll tell the viewers this and listeners this. I remember years ago, you will remember when there was Gordon Brown in power and you had David Cameron as leader of the opposition, and he was campaigning and he had the slogan, "Vote blue, go green." And I'd bought myself a great new car, which was a convertible. And he saw it because I was doing something to us, fiddling with it. I can't remember what it was. I think it was getting the roof down. And he said, "Oh, that's a nice car. What make is it?" and all the rest of it. And I sort of told him. And I said, "The only problem is it's a petrol engine, twin turbo, and every time I accelerate, 3 species become extinct." And he laughed, and then he suddenly said, "Oh no, I shouldn't be laughing at that. Very bad joke, very bad joke."
It's a great story.
And I hasten to add, by the way, 3 species do not go extinct every time I accelerate. I've still got the same car.
Well, there you go.
Great condition. It's 20 years old, and I love it.
Well, like you, beautifully maintained. Meanwhile, Sir Michael, young people on benefits are now less likely to get a job than the over 55s. If young people can't get on the housing ladder, can't afford their rent, can't even get a job, this doesn't end well.
No, it does not. And, one of the things that Keir Starmer kept saying yesterday at Prime Minister's questions, his very last, was, "I've left the country in a better condition than I got it in." And that's absolutely untrue. Youth unemployment under him has soared. And one of the reasons is because he has said that the minimum wage for young people should be the same as older, experienced people. Well, one of the reasons why the minimum wage was lower was to encourage employers to take on young people, despite the fact that they would have to train them up, get them into a sort of work-like ethic, and that would be slightly offset by the cost of employment, which was lower. That isn't the case anymore. And, Spain has historically had much, much higher youth unemployment than us, and it led to terrible disasters and rioting in Madrid. And I would hope that that's not going to happen here. But, having a whole phalanx of youngsters who can't get employment is particularly bad news for this country and its future.
Well, I agree. Now, Sir Michael, we are still processing the horrific murder of your friend and mine, very much a member of the Talk family, Anne Widdecombe. Zia Youssef of Reform UK has stated that he'll introduce round-the-clock security for all MPs if he becomes Home Secretary. Do you back that move?
Well, I can tell you that some MPs don't want that sort of security. I just think it's slightly naive, because if you're going to provide 2 police officers who are armed for you need 3 shifts. So you're talking about 6 police officers times 650 members of Parliament, plus other security measures that are taken, sometimes more than 3 police officers. It was interesting. I shouldn't pick out people, but I was with you on Sunday,
Yeah.
and in your studio, and the next guest was Liz Truss, and you saw the number of police officers she had, and she'd been Prime Minister for how long? 45 days? I can't remember the exact number.
44, 45, yeah, that ballpark.
Yeah. I think it's very expensive. I don't think it would work necessarily because a lot of MPs I know have refused to have that sort of round-the-clock treatment. And I think Zia Yousaf went further and said that former MPs, because don't forget, Anne Widdecombe was not an MP when she was murdered. She had left the House of Commons several years earlier. I think he was saying that they should have protection too. So, we'd probably end up with finding that there'd be even fewer policemen on the streets and just following around a number of MPs. I know I would feel uncomfortable.
Well, I wanted to ask you that. If you were still in the House of Commons, would you like to have bodyguards, Sir Michael?
Well, it was offered, even when I was an MP, but I didn't take it up. I sort of felt reasonably safe I felt very safe in my own constituency. Of course, the problem was with Anne Widdecombe, someone had travelled several hundred miles to come down to murder her.
Yeah.
But, I think it's unwise to talk about individuals' protection. But certainly when I was an MP, it was offered, but I didn't want it. And when I did surgeries, I did them very carefully. I did them by appointment. I would go to people's houses, or they would meet me in a coffee bar if it was a general subject they wanted to discuss. One thing I didn't do, and I noticed my successor in Lichfield is not doing it either, are sort of open surgeries where anybody can just turn up. I think that's asking for trouble. And, and indeed it is asking for trouble because, of course, it was David Ames who was killed in a surgery.
Sir Michael, thank you so much for your time. We will speak soon. Sir Michael Fabricant, former Conservative MP and now broadcaster and political commentator.